Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Gaming the System, the podcast where three intersectional feminists examine gaming and games through a feminist lens. Today, I am your host, Matt, and I'm joined by my friends Alex and Jem. Before we get started, if you want to support us, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/gamingthesystem for some exclusive content, or you can send us a one-off donation via PayPal to our email address wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com. Right, so today we are going to be talking about the gaming news of the moment, what is happening in the world of gaming. So we're going to spend, the way it's going to work, each of us has brought one story, and we're going to go through them one at a time and let you know what is going on. So to kick us off, Alex, what story have you got?
Well, I have a story all about Assassin's Creed, which is one of my favourite franchises in gaming, and this is all about the next installment. So, this one is due to have its cinematic trailer released tomorrow on YouTube at 5 p.m. British time. And in the title of that video preview, I believe they inadvertently spoiled the release date of the game, which is the 15th of November 2024. And they've removed that now, but people have seen it and taken screenshots. So a little faux pas by Ubisoft there, which I thought was interesting. But I don't know if you guys have been following along. This game was codenamed Red, and it's going to be set in feudal Japan, which is something that has been rumoured for a very long time in the series, which is always quite interesting. And it's now going to be called Assassin's Creed Shadows. And in terms of the protagonists, another interesting point is that you'll start off as a male assassin slash samurai, and it's a real life person. And I'll just double check what they're called. It's somebody called Yasuki, who is a real life samurai who is apparently in the story of Assassin's Creed going to be on a slave ship and kind of finds his way into Japan and learns to become a samurai. But obviously, being on a slave ship, he is black, so it'll be another black assassin as a main character, which is interesting as well. And then there will also be, as is the usual thing these days, another character who you can play who will be a female assassin who's got a more stealthy style of gameplay, which is very much in the mold of Assassin's Creed Syndicate. For anyone that's played will know that Jacob and Evie Fry, the Fry twins, Jacob was a lot more aggressive and sort of hands-on fist-fighty, and Evie was a lot more stealthy. And they did try to kind of push you in that direction with both the characters, although technically you could really play them in the same way because they just used more or less the same sorts of character moves for each of them. So it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. And I'm just quite excited for the release of the trailer tomorrow because I always find that the trailers are very exciting, even though they probably don't represent a lot of what's actually going to be core gameplay. But yeah, I just wanted to share that with you guys and see if you had any thoughts on Assassin's Creed in general, and also just generally if game trailers get you excited anymore, because I know they've changed a lot over the years. But yeah, that's the first story I wanted to share.
Yeah, I only came across this yesterday. I don't know
Mm,
why they seem to have been like quite a sudden
yes,
reveal,
yeah,
um, and there have been lots of samurai
mm,
games.
they certainly have.
There have been the Ghost of Tsushima was as close to an Assassin's Creed game as it could be, um, but one thing that hasn't been done has been uh, what the Shogun TV series has done, which is it's a Japanese story about Japanese people written by Japanese people in a
Mm,
Japanese way. It's almost always from like the last samurai perspective of a white man comes in and becomes a samurai, and it's all about
mm,
him. So and the story of the Black Samurai is a very, very
Mm.
interesting one that I've not seen explored before. So having a black man escaping from a slave ship and a female character, that sounds good.
Hmm. Yeah.
So that when it comes to game trailers, if it's a game that I'm really, really excited by, I don't like to
Mm.
watch trailers. I don't like to go in blind. For example, I still use an email address that I set up for Death Stranding called No Death Stranding, so that I could have a separate YouTube account, so I wouldn't be surprised by Death Stranding stuff. But I'll probably take a look at this. I like Assassin's Creed, but I'm not as invested in it as I would be with, say, Death Stranding and God of War.
Yeah, I haven't followed it at all. I've never properly engaged with Assassin's Creed. I have played a little bit of it, but I just kept dying, and I'm not very good at the jumping around.
Yeah, the parkour has always been a bit sketchy, to be honest. You just kind of accept
I'm not.
it.
Yeah, I'm not very good. The biggest problem for me, actually, which I sort of realised when I was playing Baldur's Gate, is that I don't really enjoy the games that are all about how quickly you can mash the right combination of buttons. That I just feel like, I mean, maybe it's my age, but I've never really enjoyed those kind of games. I've always struggled with them. Resident Evil is like the only one that I really kind of got into, and early Lara Croft, early Tomb Raider, and a bit of Uncharted. But I've generally, because I haven't been a console gamer, I think it's changed what I expect and what I look for in a game. So Assassin's Creed has sort of passed me by, but the way that you've talked about it on the pods has inspired me and makes me want to go and pick it up. But I just also, the other problem is that I'm really bad at just dropping a game for like a couple of months.
Yeah.
And one of the things with these technically difficult games is that you can't do that. It's so hard to come back to it and remember all the moves and the combinations in, you know, when you've had a long break. And, you know, at the beginning you just learn it as you're going along, and they're usually well paced in how they teach you. But yeah, for me, I find it so that's why I'm always a bit nervous to pick these games up, because I'm like, well, if I'm not going to run it through in one sitting, well, not one sitting, but one, you know, regular gaming sessions, then am I just setting myself up to get halfway through the game and then not be able to get back into it? And I have done that with a few Final Fantasy games, so I have form. But I know it's a really well-loved game, and I think it does sound really interesting that they're setting it in Japan, that they're setting it in this interesting and sort of like very exotic genre, and there's obviously lots to draw on there and lots of historical interest. I think it'll be interesting to see how true to that they are, because my understanding is they've been quite faithful to the sort of true histories of the areas and the stories that they follow. So I think that it'd be interesting to see how, you know, there's always this worry, isn't there, about sort of Disneyfying these games, and sort of being disrespectful to the histories and the cultures that they're borrowing from. So is it going to be cultural appropriation or cultural appreciation? That's what
An episode for another time, definitely. Yeah.
I think that I sit thinking about other samurai games. There's Sekiro and Nioh and the Onimusha series, and just there's because samurais are just cool, and ninjas are cool. They've been done potentially to death, and so Assassin's Creed has explored areas. Though definitely this could have been a very early thing for them to have done. We'll play it safe and we'll play an assassination story in Japan. Then why do we think they've waited this long?
It's an interesting question
to do
because
one
it's
set
been
in
rumoured
Japan?
for ages and ages, like literally since like Assassin's Creed, the Ezio sort of trilogy. It's been rumoured that they're going, or like people are pushing for them to go to Japan for ages. It's interesting. I think, like you say, there's so many other samurai games. Maybe they were like, maybe we should hold off for a little while. But then again, there's also quite a lot of games that focus on Greek mythology and other various mythologies as well. And we've had ancient Greece. But then there's also, and I can't think of what I was going to say. But there's so many other different periods that have been done, lots and lots by other games. So it's an interesting question. I think maybe, I don't know, maybe they thought if we hold off for a little while, people will come back to it, or they'll be super keen because of things like Shogun, like the TV series and stuff, maybe to just spend more time in that world. It's a tricky balance, I'm sure, because there is a danger that people are just going to be tired of it, having so many other things that are already a bit like it, that are already available. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how they differentiate themselves and how they make it interesting to someone who might have played a lot of similar games or been watching a lot of similar things all about that period of history. I guess the cinematic trailer might give us some clues, so we'll have to wait and see. But your guess is as good as mine for when they chose to release it. Yeah.
Yeah. Assassin's Creed was I think the first game I played on PS3, so they'll always have a place in my heart. And I loved particularly Odyssey and Valhalla. So they've been going strong, in my opinion. So yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll be something exciting at least. For our next story, I'm going to go to me. Part 2. So, I'm sure everyone knows now, the Fallout TV series has been a smash hit. It's a big deal, and we're gonna have a little chat about that. First off, from the bit of information that I'd like to put up first is the incredible surge in people playing the games over the last couple of weeks, and that Fallout 4 had at one point 164,000 concurrent players, and Fallout 76 at 73,000. So this is the model that all game adapters should be looking at, I think, because what they want is they'll release the show, and then that will immediately get people to go, oh my god, I need to play these games, and that's clearly what has been happened. So I've watched all of it. How about the two?
I have watched all of it as well. Yes, yeah.
I've only watched the first episode, but I really enjoyed the first episode and definitely will be watching the rest of it. I just haven't had opportunity.
I at first I'll be interested to see what you two think about this. At first I was pleased that it was released in one go, because that was sort of how TV streaming sort of kicked off on Netflix, where everything would be released in one go. But it has led to situations like this so Alex and I have watched it all, and Jamie, you haven't, whereas last year when you and I, it was last January when The Last of Us TV show was on, and because that was weekly, that allowed Jem and I to talk about it as it went along. Whereas when it's only released in one go, then it is rich enough to be a once a week
I think so.
100%. And so at first I was thinking, oh yeah, this is great, but I think,
Yeah.
do you think it was the right decision?
I think it's definitely, I enjoy a weekly format, but I think a lot of people, especially the younger generation, might feel like that's a very dated format these days, because they're used to getting everything in one go. I think in terms of, people being able to talk about it like we do, it's better to be in a weekly format, because even a lot of reviewers online were saying this is already going to be a less popular video because people have already reviewed it before me and it's been out like a week, and now my video is boring old news because people have already watched reviews of the show, like the day that it came out and stuff. So that's kind of limiting the reaction in terms of people's content and the ability to kind of talk about it online, in a way that's relevant over a long period of time. But yeah, I do enjoy like the weekly thing, because then everyone's always on the same page, and you avoid spoilers, I should say, inadvertently or otherwise. But yeah, I think I do prefer the weekly format for me.
Yeah, I think there's been a massive debate in the industry about which is better, and I know that they were talking, I think sort of the latter half of last year, about a sort of shift maybe to the sort of weekly release, but I don't know what the thinking is about it really, and I think different channels think different things, and I think it is really problematic on the spoilers side of things, and it's really problematic for those of us that like to comment on these things and be involved in it, that you either have to sit down and, whether you like it or not, watch it all in one sitting, or you have to accept that people might view your review as old hat because it happens 3 weeks after the launch of the series. I do think that is a problem in general, actually, with this idea that we live in this sort of 24/7 world where we expect something new with every intake of breath, really, and I think it's a shame, because some shows, especially those that take place over time, everything takes place over time, but I mean a longer sort of period, a longer period of time. Those sort of shows, you need to have that time between the episodes to process and to be in a new position so that you can pick up and move on with the story. I do think that processing is something that I'm really interested in at the moment in general, the processing of information, and I do think that we live in a society that actively works against giving people time to process information or to process things, and that we don't recognise the value of having time to let that information just percolate through your brain and impact and change the way that you think. And I think that having that time makes for a more enjoyable process, actually. At the end,
it definitely helped.
You get more from the story.
When I was watching things like The Traitors, because that was weekly, that definitely helped with processing, because you need at least a few hours to discuss what had been going on in each episode. So I'm on board with you there, Jem, definitely.
Yeah. I suppose that's the biggest strength of the show, I think, is that it perfectly captures the experience of playing a Fallout game. It'll start and everything's like, and then you're just all the time going, something's wrong, something's wrong, what's wrong? And then it happens, and then you have to deal with that, and then you move on to the next thing. So, for example, we can talk about this at length. A great one when she gets married, and you're thinking, oh, this is great. Something's wrong. When's it gonna go? Oh, it's gone wrong
Yeah.
now. And her going okie dokie when he takes all his clothes off is
Yeah.
hysterical. And then so there's that, and then there's the shit hitting the fan in a very extreme way. And then there's a mystery that you've got to leave the vault for. I don't how much if at all have you played of the games?
I've played a little bit of Fallout 4 and the mobile game Fallout Shelter. I played a lot of that for solidly for 3 months and then just stopped. And I got as far as basically a horde of ghouls in Fallout 4, and then they scared me so much that I was like, nope, and I left the game. But I did get to get power armor at that museum in Boston, I think it is. I remember that, and I found dog meat, and I also began to create a settlement. But that's as far as I got in Fallout 4. But I enjoyed it for the bit that I did play. Yeah.
Yeah, I played it a long time ago. I'm trying to remember where I was living when I did it. But at least close to 20 years ago, I guess, 18 years ago. Yeah, probably 18 years ago. And I did really like it as you know, the game mechanics and everything. I can't remember which one it was. But I didn't like the world. I just found the world too depressing, too bleak, too horrific. That I think I've said before, you know, I have a general phobia around nuclear holocaust anyway. So it just triggered all of that for me and hooked into all of that. So I didn't continue to play it, but not because of the game or the story or any of those things, just simply because I just found that desolate world too bleak, and I don't game for bleak.
Yeah, I certainly felt like when you're out in the open, you're just constantly under threat, which was a very uncomfortable feeling. You know, I just want to wander around and have a look at stuff, not be like, is something going to eat me every 5 seconds? Yeah, that did make me uncomfortable, definitely. I feel like that was ever so slightly missing from the TV series, but in a slightly different way. Like obviously it puts across the dangers of the wasteland in a really good way, but it in a different kind of way. I don't know if you felt the same, Matt. I don't want to be too spoilery, but yeah, we can talk about it
Yeah,
more
I thought,
at another time. But yeah.
Yeah, I played Fallout 4. I've only played Fallout 4 all the way through. Fallout 3, I was put off just because it's all green, and because it's 15 years ago, they can't make it look very. You can have a very rich post-apocalyptic environment, but it was a bit too green and grey for me. But then I played Fallout 4, and they clearly went, okay, we're going to do to Fallout 3 what Assassin's Creed 2 did to Assassin's Creed 1. Because Assassin's Creed 1 was that grey Middle East, very grey. And then they went to the Renaissance of Italy with all that colour exploding into it. And I feel like and then I played it very recently. I played it for hundreds of hours and completed absolutely everything in it. And I think the quintessential Fallout experience is wandering through a wasteland, seeing something, going, oh, I wonder what that is. And then you go inside, and then this story unravels through the environment. And that was, I remember us talking about it, wondering what it was going to be like. And I was thinking, how do you capture that kind of storytelling? Because it's an environment, it's environmental based, but it managed to do it perfectly.
Definitely.
So I have a question about that though, because off the back of everyone loving this, they put the games on massive discounts on Steam. Yeah. So I picked up Fallout 4 for £3 or something insane, and also New Vegas. And I did go and do some reading and like which are the best games to go back and play, and most people kind of came up with New Vegas because they were saying that from a story perspective it was really good. But then I saw loads and loads of reviews after I got them. I saw loads and loads of reviews of people saying, well, I went back to play it, but it wasn't as good as I'd hoped. It wasn't like the TV show, or it was, the graphics weren't good enough, and it just ran. And so I haven't actually played either of them because I'm such a graphics snob. I mean, given that I started gaming in a day of pixel, well, not even pixel graphics, of flipping text, you know, I mean, you would think that I would be really open to like games of all types, but I'm really funny when it comes to graphics, and it has to look right for me to be able to properly engage with it. And so, I mean, how did you find that work for you, Matt, when you went back to play these?
So unfortunately, I'll just brush over this really quickly. I desperately want to play New Vegas because it was made by the same people who made The Outer World, which is a bloody masterpiece. Just the surreal storytelling is just magnificent, but it's a buggy fucking nightmare. It's unplayable on PC, and that spoiled it. And it's one of those things where it just needs a remake. They both just need a remake, and people have been screaming that forever, but companies don't listen to it. It's just going, take our money. They just won't listen. Okay, so we're going to move on to our last story for the segment. Jem, what have you got?
Well, actually, I think I'm just going to follow really nicely on from what your story was, Matt, because I came across an article today that was talking about how in Hollywood, video games are the new superheroes. This was a Bloomberg UK piece that was posted on the 10th of May by Jason Schreier. So, and it's a really interesting piece. Actually, it goes into a lot of detail about what's going on in the industry. But I had not realised the list of computer games that are being snapped up now as for movies or for TV series is insane. And it starts off by saying that this person. This woman received a call for a game that they had created. I think it was sort of like two people and a cat had put this game together. It was done on a shoestring, and it's called Dredge. And it was described as part serene fishing game, part horror. I was like, okay. And apparently somebody rang up and wanted to buy the rights to turn it into a movie. And it wasn't just anyone. It was, you know, one of the really big kind of production teams. And at first she thought it was a joke. She thought it was a scam. But no, it turned out to be real. And then the article goes into talking about how, you know, back in the 90s, computer games forming the sort of basis for movies was really a laughing stock. You know, we had lots of really bad games. I think Resident Evil was horrendous, even though it was really nice to see the dogs. They were cool. But the Hounds of Hell. And the Sonic the Hedgehog ones didn't get, you know, very popular response from the critics. However, they made 700 million between the two of them. So, you know, it's not small amounts of money. But now we've got the Mario movies coming out, and obviously we've had the Fallout, which is, as you said, massively successful, Matt. And then before that we had The Last of Us, and apparently they're doing God of War. And is that a movie? Is that going to be a movie?
I think it's going to be on Prime, so it's probably going to be a series, as far as I know. Yeah.
So there's God of War. Apparently, somebody's bought the rights to Disco Elysium, Borderlands, The Witcher. Obviously, we know about Elsewhere, El Paso, Golden Axe. I mean, it's just a crazy long list of games that are being snapped up by Hollywood, and I think they're sort of seeing it as an opportunity to milk it going forward in the same way that they have the graphic novels. But I think that if they can do them to the same or at least similar level as Fallout and The Last of Us, then it's going to be a really interesting couple of years.
I've just something occurred to me that irritates me about it. It's interesting that you brought up that in the past, it's only recently that games have been people going, oh my god, we just buy them all and make them all now. Is because 20 years ago you had to use your imagination to think what this game could look like. Whereas I think a problem with looking back at gaming past is at the time, at any time, a game that you play that is like just standard graphics at the time, it feels like I play God of War Ragnarok and it looks the same to me as the original God of War did. But when the movie studio looks at the original God of War and they see all those pixels, they go, ha! How am I supposed to turn this into something that looks good? And the reason they're all doing it now is because all video games look at least as good as movies. They're the artists that put the work into games now. Literally, you can just go, oh well, I'll just copy. If I just copy what they've done, the copy power armor, easy. Copy ghouls, easy. And copy vaults, easy. The hardest part is making it look good, and then it's people go from books the story and the world is done, but you still need to make it look like no one knew what Hogwarts looked like before the Philosopher's Stone movie, and it's looked like that ever since. It's wild.
I think what's quite interesting is that you've got this sort of cyclic nature between these two that you were talking about earlier with Fallout, Matt. That you have a game that has a massive fan base, and then you turn it into a TV series which creates its own massive fan base, which in turn go and rediscover or discover the original games, and so it becomes this sort of cycle which benefits everyone in those two industries. It's a good thing, and from our perspective, it's a great thing because it's mainstreaming gaming, which can only be a positive thing for getting people to game. I mean, I think there are lots of ways it can go wrong, but I think getting more people, normalising gaming and making it more mainstream, I think will be a positive thing going forward for people like us.
I think it also helps broaden awareness of like the types of games that are out there as well, because like people would probably go in thinking like, oh, this is a game, that's what I think of as gaming, is this type of game. But then seeing different TV series and films of different games, you'd be like, oh, I didn't think that was like The Last of Us. I think a lot of people were like, oh my god, is this really a game story? They suddenly realised that actually gaming can have really rich and really well developed stories. So yeah, it's exciting times, and hopefully they can all be good quality, because we've also had some pretty poor adaptations in recent years as well, like the Uncharted film. That's not the best, and I think the most recent Tomb Raider did a fair job, but it's not like a 5-star amazing groundbreaking film. It's a decent watch. It's a fun watch. I think that's the base level that we can expect from a lot of these adaptations. But with the TV series, I think they're kind of setting the standard because they've got more time to tell those stories. Which is so interesting. Yeah.
Also, the framing. Last of Us Part 2, sorry, Last of Us TV show and Fallout both had incredibly high caliber showrunners. So the Last of Us had the guy Craig Mazin who created Chernobyl, which is an unbelievable masterpiece, and Neil Druckmann, the director of Naughty Dog Games, who directed the games. And then Fallout had Jonathan Nolan, who is Christopher Nolan's brother,
wow.
and he did Westworld. So you need incredible high caliber people doing it. And yeah, so it's going to be tricky finding those people who understand how the games work, because clearly he understands how it works. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to produce it. So
one of the people that they interviewed in the article said that that games don't always have something about how games aren't necessarily very story driven. The games that have been transferred into movies and TV shows aren't necessarily very story driven, but they have very rich worlds. And I think that is also something that has changed. And as you're saying, Matt, the graphics are leaving so little to the imagination now. And I think the storylines have become so rich and so intense that they lend themselves to making amazing TV shows if they're given the proper treatment by the right people. So yeah, I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, and one we'll have to talk about. Oh yeah, there's just far too much to talk about, but we don't have time to do it now. We'll save that for another day. And yeah, thank you everyone for listening to this episode of Gaming the System, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.